What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today we need to continue a tradition which we only started last year, to be fair, although you'll see why in a second. We need to have a look at the One Piece TCG Awards 2024, the best cards that were released in this calendar year. So of course we need to have a look at which ones were released in this calendar year, and essentially it is all the sets released after OP06, so that's OP06 to OP09, as well as the extra sets. I'm talking of course about EB01 and Premium Booster 01, and every starter deck from starter deck 11 onwards. So OP06 onwards, EB01 and Premium Booster 01, and starter deck 11 onwards. That's what we've had released. So let's start off with the best artwork of the year, which I'm going to be giving to the Doflamingo from Premium Booster 01, with a very strong recommendation also for the Charlotte Katakuri from Premium Booster 01. I'm going to be honest with you, I am absolutely in love with the work Akira Igawa does for the One Piece TCG, so most years, this is just going to be my favourite Akira Igawa artwork from the game, and I think these are really the top two of the year. I think there's plenty of phenomenal artwork in the game. Basai, again, I do think has just done absolutely amazing work, but I think these are the two best. Also absolutely adore the Crocodile that just came around in OP09. That is a card that I absolutely adore, but I've made my choice. It is Don Quixote Doflamingo, and then Charlotte Katakuri, and then Crocodile. They're my top three. They're all Akira Igawa. I will not be apologising for this. In terms of the most valuable card, this is an objective measure where we can actually just look at the most expensive card. It's obviously the Gold Roger, the Gold Manga Roger. Second place would be the Manga Luffy from OP09, but that's quite a bit behind the Gold Manga Roger. If I had an award for best card I pulled this year, that would be the OP09 Manga Luffy, but I don't, so it's not. In terms of the best stage, if we start with our different types of cards here, I think we have to go Kingdom of Germa from OP06, but this is kind of by default. Because if you're playing Reiju, you're probably playing Kingdom of Germa, and you're probably playing it as a 4-of, it's phenomenal in a Reiju deck. The thing is, Reiju's not really been good since like the OP06 meta. It's just I spent a long time searching around yesterday, trying to make sure I've not forgotten anything. Nobody plays stages. Stages see like very little play, so even though Reiju's not been a great deck for a lot of the year, I still think in terms of the best stage of the year, has to be this one. Remember, we are only talking about cards that released in the year 2024, and I know you're all going to disagree with at least some of these, so people like in the comment section, but look, if you disagree with some of these, tell me what you would have picked instead. In terms of the best event, I'm giving it to Three Brothers Bond from Starter Deck 13. And this is not the only time I'm going to mention Black Yellow Luffy in this video, but Black Yellow Luffy really has been an iconic deck this year, and Three Brothers Bond is not a very exciting card, just lets you look at the top 5 cards of your deck and find one of the Three Brothers of a cost of 5 or less, but the fact is, it's been instrumental in helping, well, maybe the best deck of the year, we'll have to see when we get to that award, be very, very good. If you prefer, we could go You're the One Who Should Disappear, another yellow event card for what it's worth. Sees play in a huge amount of decks, but also it's just trash a card from your hand to get a 3k bump. But as a trigger, if you've got 0 life, you can add a card from the top of your deck to your life, and then trash a card from your hand. It's best in Enel decks, which have not been the best decks of the year, but it's also just a phenomenal card in yellow as a whole generally. So if you want to go for that one, I wouldn't be terribly upset. But let's be clear, I'm going for the Three Brothers. If we go colour by colour and start with red, I think the best red card released this year was Kid and Killer from EB01. Red was one of the hardest ones to do here because it's not been a great year for red. Red has not had a great year in 2024. So I'm giving it to Kid and Killer because when we see decks like Zoro doing well, which is not all the time, Kid and Killer tends to be there. It tends to be there as a 4-of. It's got Rush, and if your opponent's got 2 or less life, it's actually a 7k with Rush. It's a phenomenal card that sees a bunch of play in red. But if you go and have a look over on Limitless TCG at the best decks around, and you look at all the different formats that we've had in the year 2024, which is what I did extensively when preparing for this video, you'll see red has not had a great year. The best we had was red purple lore from the starter deck 10 at the beginning of the year. That was a good deck quite early on in the year. And honestly, back then, what was the most impactful red card that released in the year 2024 in that deck? Yeah, it's Kid and Killer. Cool. Moving on to the next color then. In blue, the best deck. I'm giving it to the Hancock from Starter Deck 17. This is another weird color though, because essentially, when we're looking at this award, I think we kind of need to focus on the Doflamingo deck. I think Doflamingo has ended up being the best blue deck of the year. It's not the best deck of the year, sorry about that, spoiler alert, but I think it's been the best blue deck of the year. So we have to look at one of the new cards that's gone and helped blue decks, and I think the best of them has been the new Boa Hancock. It's a 4-cost, 6k, with blocker, and you get to rearrange the top 3 cards of your deck, which is great for Doflamingo decks, and you get to give a rested Don to your 7 Warlords of the Sea leader or character. That's why I think it's the best card. It's amazing. The Trafalgar Law from Starter Deck 17, also amazing. Lets you bump one of your characters to your hand and then one of your opponents as well. That could have been the option here. The Jinbei from OPO 7, another phenomenal card that did get consideration here. Weirdly, apparently they're all 4 costs, because it lets you play a 7 Warlords of the Sea, cost of 4 or less other than Jinbei from your hand. But I think overall, on balance, it really has been Doflamingo, and therefore we have to go for Boa Hancock. Yes, I know that Nami has had a pretty good year overall. What are we going to do? Give Whitesnake the best blue card of the year? Which I think would be the option if we were looking at Nami. No, I'm not doing that. I think it's Boa Hancock. Although Whitesnake, to be fair, would be not a terrible choice. Moving on, we can have a look at the best green card of the year. I'm pretty happy this is Cavendish from EBO1. Cavendish from EBO1 is one of those cards I looked at initially and I was like, yeah, that's broken. That card's absurd. Like, the best green deck of the year, I think we've got to be looking at Jewelry Bonnie. I think that's probably been the most impactful green card of the year. And obviously, like, Cavendish is a 4 of in that deck. But any deck where you can play Cavendish, I think it's just going to be a 4 of. It only really works in Supernova decks, which is a bit of a downside. But as long as you don't have any other Cavendish in play, you get to activate 2 Dom when you attack. The card's absurd. Oh, there's going to be more Supernova in the future, which is only going to make this better. In terms of best purple, I'm going Usohachi from Starter Deck 18. Which I don't feel great about, I'm going to be honest with you. But I do think it's the best purple card that was released this year. We've got counter plus 2k, which is good, and if you have 8 or more Don on your field, rest an opponent's character with a cost of 5 or less. It doesn't strike me like a Cavendish where you look at it and you're like, whoa, that card is absurd, but it still strikes me as a very, very good, very playable card. Because if you have a look at purple decks right now, which admittedly aren't amazing, but they are around, you'll see Usohachi is like a 4 of in all of them. In OP10, when Lim finally becomes actually playable, it's not playable in OP09, but in OP10 it is. There's only really like one purple character they play. It's all Green Odyssey cards. The only exception is they play Usohachi from Starter Deck 18. That is enough to make me think this was the best purple card released this year. Now, in terms of best black, absolutely no question whatsoever, Gecko Moria from OP06. And I think this is one that I really am not expecting any pushback on. It's one of the most ridiculous cards in the entire game, and any black deck you can play this, you are 100% playing it. And oh yeah, it's not particularly tribal, so you can play it in anything. On play, you play a character of a cost of 4 or less and a character of a cost of 2 or less from your trash. One gets played normally, one gets played rested. They can be any characters. Black tends to play from the discard and discard a lot of cards. This card is absolutely absurd. I'm sure some of these categories you're going to be arguing with me in the comments, and that's fine. This one, I expect no pushback. This is amazing. And best yellow is the one I've really agonized over the most. I think I'm going to have to give it to Charlotte Flampe from EB01, which again is just not a terribly exciting card. It's just great for early game consistency. What we've got from Charlotte Flampe here is a 2k counter, which is great, 1 cost card, and on play you can add a card from the top or bottom of your life to your hand and draw a card. So it's either a 2k counter or it's a +1. You play this and get 2 cards in your hand, and honestly, if you have a look at all the yellow decks being played right now, it's this. This is probably the best one around. I really like the ace from OP07. I think the ace from OP07 is absolutely phenomenal. Sees a huge amount of play in a bunch of decks because you get to add a card from the top of your deck to the top of your life, and then if you've got 2 or less life, you got Rush, and it's a 10 cost, 10k. Ace is phenomenal, and if you want to take out Flampe and put in ace, I will not be angry with you. But looking now and in the future, sneaking ahead into Japan's next format, or now format, which is our next format, does feel like Flampe is just seeing a little bit more play. Now, in terms of the best leader, it's easy. It's Luffy from Starter Deck 14. I feel really confident about this. It's Luffy from Starter Deck 14. This is the leader which has had the biggest impact on the metagame. Right now, in the OPO, well, just pre-OPO 9 format, it's the best leader. In the OPO 8 format, it was the best leader. In the OPO 7 format, it was a top 3 leader. It's just phenomenal. Like, the worst it's been was back in the OPO 6 format, where it was the 6th best leader, and it's only climbed since then. Recent tournaments in the West have been dominated by Black-Yellow Luffy. Luffy from Starter Deck 14. I feel very confident best leader released this year. So what was the best deck this year? Sakazuki. I know Sakazuki, the leader, released last year, but when we're talking about decks, we're talking about the performance in 2024 of the deck rather than looking at the cards released in 24. And I know Sakazuki did get banned fairly early on in the year, but we had our international championships at the beginning of last year. They were dominated by Sakazuki. It was a complete top 4 at the European internationals, and it was good to the point they literally had to ban Sakazuki. It was that ridiculously over the top, overpowered great. And that's your answer here. Yes, I know it got banned fairly early on in the year, but when I think back to 2024 and I look at the most impactful deck of the year, it's Sakazuki. In terms of the best expansion, OP09. Before OP09 released, I would have said it was Premium Booster 01, but no, it's OP09. And there's a million reasons why it's OP09. Partly it's a gold Roger, most expensive card we've had that you can pull from a pack ever. Partly it's a 4 manga, including the Luffy, which is a, top 3 card that you can pull from a pack. Partly it's the fact that we've got 2 different types of special rares, the wanted poster and the regular. I mean, the value is all over the place, but also it's the leaders. Shanks is a great leader. Gecko Moria is a great leader. And then, no, Buggy is not on the same level as them, but it's still a good playable leader. And Luffy is not on the same level, but it's a good playable leader. The only bad leader in the set is Lim, and like I say, when we get to OP10, Lim suddenly becomes pretty good. Make no mistake about it, OP09, hands down, landslide, best expansion. I've done these awards for other games, and to put it simply, this was the easiest game this year to get the best expansion. It's OP09 in a landslide. And then we finish off with the best card of 2024. It's Gecko Moria. You could have seen this coming. When I was talking through the best cards from each colour, I was telling you that some I was thinking between this and that, and some I wasn't necessarily convinced, and blah, blah, blah. Black Gecko Moria, easy decision. And honestly, when I look back at the year that was, I don't think there was a card released better than Gecko Moria. I feel very confident that Gecko Moria was the best card released this year. So there we go. Those are my awards. And now it's over to you guys. Tell me what you think is right about this list. Tell me what you think is wrong, politely, and tell me what you would have put there instead. Give me your own list of awards in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at Lawasi. That's where we talk about One Piece and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, join a Discord and all kinds of fun things. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross and you've been watching Wossy Plays.